So today we are continuing with chapter 15. So we were on, last time we went through, this one, na tad bhasayate surya, na shashanko na pavakaha, yad gatva na nivartante, tad dham paramapam. So this we did this last time. And we talked about cognition and Vedanta's theory on cognition, how vrittis are used and how we use, to understand the world around us. And we also started talking about what we're going to cover today, which is the first line of the next shlok, which is Mama evam anshaha jiva loke jiva bhutaha sanatanaha. That means Bhagwan Krishna is telling Arjun that Mama eva anshaha, मतलब मेरा ही अंश है ये जो जीव लोक में जीव भूत मतलब ये जो जीव भूता मतलब ये जो सारे लोग हैं the beings, the human beings and others, animals and everybody, people who are inhabiting these jiva loka, मतलब prithvi or whatever, different kinds of lokas, sanatana, they're eternal. So these eternal beings who are inhabiting this world, who are in this world, they're all my ansh alone. Okay? And this in itself is a big statement. I'm going to stop share here. And we talked last time about how this can be very confusing because different philosophies look at this relationship between Ishwar and jiva. Jiva being humans or animals. Any living creature is called a jiva. So, what is the relationship between jiva and Ishwara? And this statement, if you just take it on face value, it seems to say that the jiva is an ansh. Ansh means a part. Jiva is a part of Ishwar because Bhagwan Krishna is talking as Ishwar. So, Mama, my ansh is these jivas, is what he's saying. That means Ishwar's ansh. So, and there is a philosophy which takes this literally, and it's called Vishishtadvaita. And they say, yes, indeed, this Ishwar or Paramatma is nothing but the sum total of all the individual Atmas. That's how their worldview is. So Vishishtadvaita is that. So the relationship between Ishwar and Jiva. But there are two other, Advaita has like 6 different schools, or actually even more than that. 6 are the recognized ones, but 3 are the big ones. They are the 3 buckets. So there's another school which is called Dvaita Vedanta. Sorry, did I say Advaita has 6 schools? I meant Vedanta has 6 schools. Yeah, sorry. So Vedanta has 6 schools. One is called Dvaita Vedanta, another is Vishishtadvaita Vedanta, and the third is Advaita Vedanta. So Vedanta has 6 schools, but I'm just talking about 3. Okay? Because these 3 cover the broad gamut. And then there are others which are in between these. They position themselves in between, say, Dvaita and Vishishtadvaita or Vishishtadvaita and Advaita, those kinds of things. So the Dvaita schools and all the main difference in these 3 or all the schools of Vedanta is how they define the relationship between Paramatma, which is Ishwar, and Jiva. So Dvaita says that the Jiva and Paramatma are 2 entirely different things. So Jiva can never become Paramatma because Jiva is limited knowledge, limited understanding, limited resources. Not much Jiva can do in the face of Ishwar. Ishwar is infinite, omnipotent, totally, Sarva Shaktiman. So the Ishwar is knows everything, all resources, all powers, everything with Ishwar. Jiva is nothing like that. So how can we say that Jiva can become Ishwar? Because, this is an interesting concept. If there is nothing which is finite can ever become infinite. Howsoever much you grow it and add to it, it will never become infinite. Because jitna bhi tum usko add karoge, there will always be something more to add. and infinite has nothing more to add. So by accreting more and more to something which is a finite thing, you cannot become infinite. So, you can't have an infinite set, which is just adding little elements. Because you're a mathematics guy, so I don't want to get into the math of this because I'm sure there's much more detail there. But the idea is this, that you will have to keep adding forever to become infinite. So jiva can never, basically, the jiva can approach Ishwar, but jiva can never become Ishwar. So that's the Dvait school. So what is moksha for Dvait? What is like what is it that Dvait says is the ultimate aim of human beings to achieve moksha? Moksha for them become as close to Ishwar as possible. Get really close to Ishwar. That is moksha. So work on yourself, become better and better and better, and that. Then there is the Vishishtadvaita. Vishishtadvaita says that jiva is both same and different from Ishwar. And I think I gave you this example last time. The example they give is that of a tree. So in a tree, there's nothing called a tree really. We just call an assemblage of things, we call it a tree. But there isn't any one thing which is called a tree. Because if you look at a tree, it's got leaves. Yeah, you can say there is a leaf. It's got flowers, it's got fruit, it's got stems, it's got a trunk. All these things can be individually identified, but you can't really individually identify a tree. But when you put them all together in a particular form, we call it a tree. So Vishishtadvaita says there is really that what we call Ishwar is basically a collection or a sum total of all jivas. So jiva is a part of Ishwar. That means jiva is an ansha of Ishwar. Just like a leaf is a part of a tree, an ansha of a tree, jiva is an ansha of Ishwar. And that's the line which you just read. And then there is Advaita Vedanta, which is the old traditional Shankaracharya Vedanta. This was the first Vedanta. पहले सबसे पहले अद्वैत थी, उसके बाद विशिष्ट अद्वैत came in the 12th century. Ramanuja, and then उसके बाद Dvait Vedant came, which was the latest, because they're trying to simplify what is, it's a very difficult concept to understand. And the Advait Vedant says that there is no difference between Ishwar and Jiva. They're basically the same thing. Jiva is the same as Ishwar. The only difference is that the Jiva has through Maya, there is an ignorance. It is Ishwar who has made himself or herself ignorant and is looking at the world as a jiva. And moksha means removing that veil of ignorance and realizing that you are already Ishwar. That is the definition of moksha in Advaita Vedanta. In the Vedanta which we are all studying and in the Vedanta that is commonly known. When you just say Vedanta, people usually mean Advaita Vedanta. So the moksha in Advaita Vedanta is about the removal of the veil of ignorance. In Dvaita Vedanta, moksha is I have to work on me, the jiva, and become better and better and better to become closer to Ishwar. In Advaita Vedanta, you don't have to do any work for moksha. You have to do the work to prepare your mind. You have to do a lot of work to prepare your mind, but once your mind is prepared, it will understand through knowledge that it is nothing different from Ishwar. And that is why we say that the moksha in Advaita Vedanta is through Gyan. Gyanena eva moksha. Through Gyan only there is moksha, not through Karma. Karmani na moksha. Okay? So, and how can it be? Because you cannot, if you say, I'm going to improve myself and become better and better, I'm going to, let's say you say, I'm going to remove all my desires. That is my better and better. How long can you keep removing desires? So there will always be something more to remove. There will always be something more to get. There will always be something more to improve. So, yes, indeed, there is a purpose in Advaita Vedanta to become better, to purify yourself, but only because the mind as it is right now cannot understand this concept that I am Brahman, that I am God. So you get to a point where you have enough clarity and purity of mind, where you're not being drawn away by all your desires and emotions and thoughts and everything. Then the real teaching starts, which is you're already Brahman. Because if you're not Brahman, you cannot become Brahman. That's just a plain logical thing. If you're not infinite, you cannot become infinite, no matter what you do. Only if you are already infinite can you become infinite. In other words, because you're already infinite, what you can do at best is remove the veil of ignorance. So it's like a lion's cub. तो वह स्टोरी थी एक that a lion or a tiger, whatever, शेर, उसका एक कब था, he got lost, and a goat and a bunch of goats, they saw it wandering around छोटा सा था in the forest. So they said, okay, let's take him on, and we'll make him, we'll take care of him, because he was lost and he would have been killed if he was just left alone like that, because his parents were nowhere in sight. So they took hold of the lion, treated him like one, and kind of helped him grow. I don't know what they did about food, because I don't think lion would eat grass, but whatever. So the lion grew up. They told him, you're supposed to do moo. You're supposed to, when the lions come, run away, because those are lions. That's Paramatma. You are just a jiva. Run away from the lions. So that's all he did all his life. And then one day, the lion went to a pond and looked at his reflection in the pond. And he saw, oh my God, I am not a goat. I actually am a lion. All these lions that we run away from, that's what I am. And that is how the goat became a lion. Otherwise, the goat can never become a lion. So he said, okay, let me see what I can do. So he started speaking in his natural tone. He suddenly realized he could roar. And he roared, and all the goats ran away. And the next time the bunch of lions came, he went to them. And they said, yeah, you're one of us, come. Right? So how can a goat become a lion? Only if the goat is already a lion but doesn't know that it's a lion. That's the only way. So you can only become a Paramatma if you already know you're a Paramatma. You cannot go from, if you think that you're a Dvait type, then you're falling into the trap of the Dvait, because the Dvait says you're a jiva. You cannot possibly become Ishwar, because you can't keep on accruing. How much can you accrue? There'll always be more to accrue, because Ishwar is infinite. So that is a correct statement. So what do we tell the Dvaitas? We tell them, no, we are not actually just a jiva which is not Ishwar. We already are Ishwar. The problem is we never realize it's our own thinking that we think we are a jiva, which is different from Ishwar. So to that Dvaitan, you would say, no, actually you cannot become a limited jiva, because you already are Ishwar. Just like a finite thing cannot become infinite, infinite thing cannot become finite either. You can keep removing stuff from infinite sets and say, I removed this also, this also, this also. You'll still be left with infinity. Why? Because if you remove something and you're left with finite, then you know that the total sum is what you're left with, which is finite, plus the finite that you removed. That is a finite number. Whereas you started with infinite. So whatever, this is a prayer in our thing. Purnamada Purnamidam. You remove infinity from infinity, you're still left with infinity. You heard this prayer, na? Purnamada Purnamidam. That's what it says. From Purnam, if you remove Purnam, you're left with Purnam. So this is what we tell, or Advaitins would tell the Dvaitins, that you can it is your misconception that you think that you are not Ishwar. Okay. So, but anyway, what you believe in is what we like. Everybody has its own thing. So this is one part I wanted to tell you, which is to say that there are three ways, broadly speaking, of looking at Vedanta. And Gita mein you'll find statements for all three. So Madhavacharya also, who's the Dvaitin guy, quotes Gita. Ramanujan, who's the Vishishtadvaita, also quotes Gita. And Shankaracharya, who's the Advaitin, also quotes Gita. And you'll find these kinds of statements, plenty of them. All the statements which say, Arjun, come to me, I will take care of you. What is that statement implying? Is it implying that Arjun and Ishwar is the same thing? No. It's implying that Ishwar, Krishna Bhagwan, is all powerful and Arjun is a small jiva. And Ishwar will take care of jiva. It's completely Dvaitan. Gita is full of Dvaita statements. And statements like this, you are an ansha of me. That's a Vishishtadvaita statement. And statements where it says, I am the one that resides in each and every jiva bhuta. He says that. It's me. You are me, but I am not you. Statements like this are completely Advaita statements. And when I just sort of just out of interest, you know, if you the question is which of these are praman vakya and which of them are explanatory vakya. So if you go to praman vakya means these are the fundamental truths, and the others are explanatory statements. So you go to Ramanujan, he'll say this statement, I am an ansha, you are an ansha of me, is the praman vakya. Other statements which talk about, Dvaita and Advaita are supporting statements. They're arthavada. They are meant to motivate, they're meant to inspire. But Advaitans will say no. The Praman Vakya is like, for example, in Upanishads is the same thing. Upanishads is also the same thing. You can get all three. Upanishad they'll say Tattvamasi is the Praman Vakya. That you are me. Aham Brahmasmi is the Praman Vakya. But all these other statements, which talk about bhakti, which talk about come to me and I will take care of you, these kinds of things, these are supporting statements. And the reason why I'm telling you all this today is because I want to tell you how, it's not as if we can say, I am Advaitan and someone else is Dvaitan. This is a continuum. And we all have to go through the continuum from Dvaita to Vishishtadvaita to Advaita, that kind of thing, in order to gain knowledge. Because to most people, if you tell them you are Ishwar, it'll mean nothing. They might even get confused and they might start doing things which are stupid because they'll say, "Main to Ishwar hu." So only a prepared mind needs this, can be told this, that you're Ishwar, because a prepared mind understands the true intent of what is being said. So that's what I wanted to take you through today and talk to you a little bit about the different philosophies in India and how we confuse ourselves. We think we are talking with the Vedanta, but we are actually talking Samkhya. And I want to take, because it will become clearer to you and you'll see why you're doing those things. Like, why is it, for example, when Kiki asks the question, which he does very often, on, but it's all in the mind. All this I'm seeing is in the mind, right? It's my mind which is saying this is like this. Then how is it true? So remember, what she's doing then is saying that mind already exists. And in that mind, she's seeing this. This is a completely Samkhya view. When we learn about BMI, for example, body mind intelligence, and we say the body does this and the mind does this and the mind the vritti comes to the mind and the mind passes it to the brain and the brain, that is totally Samkhya, because we are saying that there's a mind which exists, which receives the vritti. That is Samkhya. So I'll tell you why in a second. Okay, let's go through this and then we can discuss after that. It'll take 5-10 minutes. So I'm going to tell you the basic. This was I just gave you the Vedanta example just to kind of, because that is what is needed for this shlok. But let's even step one step back, even from there. So now, what is philosophy? If you look at philosophy, science, everything as a whole, how can you think about it? And one way in which the world thinks about it, and which is a useful way to think about it, is to think about matter and spirit. Okay. So we say, when you are thinking through science, neuroscience, biology, medicine, engineering, all of that, all the studies that we do, objective sciences, what are we assuming? We are assuming without any doubt whatsoever that there is something called matter which exists. That this cup here, which I have got my coffee in, exists. Now, I'm ready to believe that this cup is not exactly what it seems, because this cup exists, but it's a collection of molecules of clay. And those molecules in turn consist of electrons and whatever, right? You can go down that path. And then you can say, yes, actually, everything which appears to exist, which is so diverse, may have one common fundamental or two, three common fundamental particles. And eventually we will come to that one common fundamental particles. We just don't know what it is, but science is all about finding out what that is. But it never denies the existence of matter. But on the other hand, it completely denies the existence of spirit. In other words, my consciousness, why am I conscious? Why do I see things and understand things and feel things? Because I'm conscious. Science believes that this consciousness is an emergent property which emerges because of a combination, a unique combination of matter. So, what is science doing when it's looking for life? It's saying there are conditions where life emerges. I'm looking at different, you know about, we are all looking, astronomers are looking at different planets trying to see where life is. So you see, if the temperature is right, you have carbon, organic particles, you have water, you have oxygen, you have different things. At some stage, when everything is just right, something happens and life emerges. In the beginning, it would be one cell, which is a single cellular life. Then it multiplies and becomes multicellular organs. And then other laws take over, law of, the Darwinian laws, fitness, which has more fitness they develop. And that is how life emerges and grows. So we say, for example, the universe has been in existence for about 13.5 billion years. The Earth itself has been in existence for 5 billion years. So it took a long time for Earth to form. And of the 5 billion years, it's less than a million that life has been on Earth. So all that time, there was matter, and somehow, at some moment, something happened. Some lightning struck. Something happened where matter combined in particular ways and created life, and then life went on. That is scientific view. That's called materialism. And in our Indian um, philosophies also, there is a particular philosophy. Let me share this with you. It's called Charvaka. Okay, Charvaka. And Charvaka is India's materialism philosophy. One sec, I'll share this. Actually, I'll share it in a little bit. Let's just keep talking. So that's India's materialism philosophy. It's called Charvaka. The Charvakas believe that all you touch and all you see is all your life will ever be. You know the Pink Floyd song? So whatever you can see, that's there. What you can't see is bunkum. They think that all this talk about life after death, heaven and hell, pap and punya, karam and do the right karam and next time you'll be born again. All this is like there's no proof of it. There's no evidence of it. That there is spirit is no evidence of it. So let's not go where there's no evidence. The only evidence is that a person is born and a person dies, and all there is matter. They also believe that this Atma is nothing but a combination of matter. So they say basically enjoy your life, live happily. If you don't have money, literally that is what they say. There is the uh, they have a Sanskrit saying too. They say if you don't have money, borrow, and then live and die. You don't have to worry about repayment of debt. That will be dekha jayega. By the time you'll be dead, who cares? You know, just relax. Have a nice time. That's why it's called Charvaka. Charvaka means sweet talk. So they talk in a very sweet way. Like have a good time, guys. Enjoy. That's their philosophy. It's called Charvaka. Then that's the one end of the continuum. Then there is Samkhya. And then there is, let's say, Vedanta, which is spiritual. So, spiritual also, there are many. Spiritual means they're only spirit, and matter doesn't exist. Matter is a creation of the spirit. In other words, like Vedanta says, All there is Brahman and Atma. But this matter, what you call the matter around you, is nothing but a projection in Brahman. It doesn't really exist on its own. But in between is Samkhya. And Samkhya says both matter and spirit exist independently. So Samkhya says there is something called matter, and that matter is all you see. And they've only also gone ahead of science. And they've said, not just is there matter, this matter is a modification of something called prakriti, which is the most basic element of matter. It's the material cause, what we call Maya, and then we say Maya doesn't exist on its own. It's dependent on Brahman, but Maya creates the world. They call that Maya, they call it prakriti. And the difference is they say prakriti doesn't need an Atma or consciousness to exist. It exists on its own. In fact, you'll see Gita is full of Samkhya. So Samkhya basically says there is something called prakriti, which evolves and modifies into creation of this world. But it exists. And independently, there is something called purusha. Purusha is what we call Brahman, sort of. Not actually, that's not correct, because Brahman is everything. So purusha is that consciousness. You can say maybe purusha is what we sometimes call conditioned consciousness, which is reflected consciousness, Pratibimbavada. So purusha is that Atma, or that consciousness. When purusha and prakriti come together, world is created. And a human being is a combination of the two. So I am this body. I have this body, I have this mind. And this mind is enlivened by my purusha, which is what we call Atma. If the Atma leaves, the mind is dead. And the Atma comes in the mind is enlivened. This is Samkhya. So what am I? I'm a combination of matter and spirit. And there are other things which are only matter. And there may be other things which are only spirit. But that's how Deepraja saw that. Just let me finish and then we will go to questions, okay? So that's Samkhya. And you'll see we are constantly falling into Samkhya. All the time we think we are asking a Vedanta question, but we are actually asking Samkhya. In fact, most of what we study in Vedanta is Samkhya. In fact, Vedanta has borrowed from Samkhya. All of these theories of creation, how was the world created, the 5 elements, pehle pani tha, फिर space, air, fire, water, earth, all this is all Samkhya. All the idea of the 3 gunas, Rajas, Tamas, all that, Sattva, is all Samkhya. Samkhya is a wonderful creation of human beings. And it is like almost Vedanta, but not quite. Because Samkhya stopped at there is this matter and there is this spirit. It made a beautiful philosophy of matter. Vedanta took it lock, stock, and barrel. There is this spirit. It made a nice philosophy of spirit. But then they stopped there. But Vedanta said, no. How can there be spirit and matter different? How would the two interact with each other? How can I, as spirit, actually observe and experience matter if I'm fundamentally different from matter? This is the thing that we have to understand if we really want to understand Vedanta. That for experience, there has to be interaction. For interaction, there has to be similarity. Not similarity, sameness. An electron can interact with another electron. Why? Because they both have electromagnetic force. An electron can interact with a proton. Why? Because they both have electromagnetic force. They both work through electromagnetic force. That's how they interact. But if you have a charged particle and there is, something which is not affected by charge, this particle will just go through. Like I keep giving you examples of neutrons, right? So this is a fundamental thing to understand. So this is just one of the arguments, but there are many such arguments in the Brahma Sutras. But the point is that Vedanta said, great, Samkhya has taken us more than halfway there, but there is more. And Vedanta said, actually, there is one common thing which underlies all matter and all spirit, what Samkhya called spirit, and that's called Brahman. So what Samkhya called spirit is nothing but conditioned Brahman, conditioned Atma, reflected consciousness, which we see reflected in our mind. That's what Samkhya is calling spirit. And what Samkhya is calling matter is nothing but Maya. Both of them have their basis in Brahman. So you remember this and remember where you're asking your question, and when you're asking your question, what is your basic assumption? When you say that I have a mind and that mind has got vritti, and that vritti in the mind is being seen by consciousness, you are talking Sankhya. And actually, even Vedanta is talking Sankhya when Vedanta talks like this. When Vedanta is talking about Vyavaharika Drishti, how we live in this world, we are talking Sankhya. When Vedanta is saying that there is only Brahman, there is no mind. The mind that you think in which your vrittis are taking place is also a vritti. There is nothing called a mind separate from a vritti. Then you're talking Vedanta. I mean, what is really Vedanta, which nobody else talks about. Now, there's one more thing I want to say, and then we will discuss, which is that it is actually very, very important to have all these things in place. Because we cannot go from what we were, which is a materialistic person, thinking science. We cannot go from that to Vedanta. It is virtually impossible. Because your mind is so conditioned that we have to have some basis. We say, okay, if something is there in which there's a vritti, how can there be what is the resting ground? What is the ground on which all this rests? That's how we think. And I will take you through a beautiful example of this, the best, which is in Buddhism. But after we answer Deep Raj's questions and have some discussion. So we have to think like this. So we cannot imagine. So we have to live with Sankhya for a while. We have to live with the Vyavaharika part of Vedanta for a while, till we are getting comfortable. We are in an intermediate transition stage. We have to live there to be comfortable. And then we can eventually go towards Vedanta. And another way to think about it is we have to have Antakarna Shuddhi. We cannot, and you may not be able to see the relation straight away, but there is a distinct relationship between Antakarna Shuddhi and our ability to understand the concepts of Vedanta. Till that happens, what we are advised to do is think like a Sankhyan. Think like a Vyavaharika Vedant person. Think that, okay, there is a mind in which the vrittis are happening. That there is a you which needs to grow. There is a you which needs to do yoga. There is a being which needs to become better, which needs to do Karam Yoga. Actually, Vedanta says there is no such being. You are Brahman already. But then we are also doing Karam Yoga. So we have to live in this world till such time that we are ready for what is truly Vedanta. Because if you're not, then Vedanta will be harmful to you rather than helpful. Because then you will either not understand or worse, misunderstand and get misled. Anyway, so this is a big, long subject, so I don't want to go too much into it. But I am, just so you guys know, I am writing an article on this, which I will share with all of you. It will be a longer one, and which we will discuss in a future thing, okay? So, Deepraj, what was your question?
You said when you were discussing Samkhya about purusha and prakriti, and how if you take prakriti out of the mind, the mind goes dead.
No, if you take
But I
Purusha
didn't
out of the mind.
understand. Yeah, I didn't understand what that meant.
No, what
So
it's saying is that basically, how is life created? Life is created by a combination of Prakriti and Purusha. So what am I? I am all these body. This body is nothing but Prakriti, it's matter. My mind is also subtle matter. So it's matter. But there is consciousness, which is there also, in addition to just that matter. You could have a dead body, will be the same as this body, but something is missing. What's missing? Consciousness is missing, right? So the difference between a dead body and a live body is consciousness. But you can't have a live body without a body. So to have a living body, you need both the body and the consciousness. Consciousness is prakriti, is purusha. The body is prakriti, and the two come together. That's when life happens. That's what Samkhya says, and this
Got
makes
it.
perfect sense. There's nothing wrong in it
Mm,
up to a point.
no, yeah. Also, uh, my next question is about this purification. No, about this Vyavaharika thing, where we think in Sankhya till we become
Ready?
purified enough to think straight up Vedanta. I mean, as long as we are self-realized, uh, how can we even accept the fact? Like, how can we accept the claims of Vedanta till
How
we're
can we accept
self-realized?
that?
Because till we're self-realized, the conditioned consciousness will exist, right? I
But
mean,
what does self-realization mean?
where you get rid of the conditioning.
No, I mean
Okay.
that's not
All
what
right.
Vedanta is saying, right? What is
Okay.
self-realization? Vedanta is saying that you already are Brahman. So what do you have
Yeah.
to do to become self-realized?
To
You
understand
don't.
that.
Yes, to understand that. You know, you,
Yeah.
there's a very there is a very famous shlok in Mundaka Upanishad, right? Which says Nasti akrita kriten. That's just a part of it. That means the thing which is beyond effort, which is infinite, cannot be achieved by effort. That was the whole point I was trying to make. That you cannot, whatever effort you do, however much you improve, you can never improve to the ultimate because there will always be more to improve. There will always be more. So you can always say, I will never be self-realized then because there's always more to improve. So if you think that you can become self-realized through effort, then you will never become self-realized. But if you know that you're self-realized already, you can, and you are already self-realized, then you'll say, yes, all I need to do is to remove my ignorance that I am self-realized. And that is what Vedanta says it has to be done. This is the essence of Vedanta, as
Okay.
distinct from most other philosophies other than Buddhism.
So, is there any effort involved in removing the ignorance?
Only knowledge is involved. And there's a difference between knowledge and effort. It's like saying you open your eyes, you're seeing something, right? You close your eyes, you're ignorant. You open your eyes, you can see. Is there an effort involved? There's an effort involved in opening the eyes, yes. But is there an effort involved in seeing? In fact, you can't prevent seeing, right? So there is an effort involved in opening your mind, in preparing your mind and opening your mind to receive the knowledge. That is what is the purpose of Karam Yoga. But there is no effort involved in knowing, in understanding. So when that knowledge comes to you as a pramana from whatever thing that you're doing, that knowledge is instant. That is what it is. But in order to open your eyes, someone has to, if you never opened your eyes all your life, and then somebody says, open your eyes, तुम कहोगे कैसे खुलती है मुझे तो पता ही नहीं how to open my eyes. They'll tell you, use this muscle, open this muscle, do this, then you open your eyes. So you got to do that. No, right now your mind is not prepared. Then you have to open your mind. How do I prepare my mind? I have no idea. Then Vedanta spends a lot of time trying to tell you how to open your mind. And it doesn't come up with anything new. It takes elements from Yoga Shastra. It takes elements from Samkhya. It takes from it because that is all done. They've done so much work on the individual already on how to make an individual better. Yoga Shastra has done so much. It's got an Ashtang Yoga thing. Udharana, ye, all that exists. Karam Yoga already exists. So use those things, and Vedanta tells you how to use those things to prepare yourself. But once you're prepared, then when you hear the teachings of a guru, from a guru, Shravana, when you hear that you are Brahman, that doesn't, understanding that requires no effort. But the reason today you can't understand, you've heard it, everybody has heard it, but we still struggle. We struggle and struggle and struggle. We say, oh, I understand everything, but I just don't understand this Satyamithya. Or I understand everything, but then how do everything is happening in my mind, right? We don't get it because we are not ready. We are not prepared. We are still operating at best in a dualistic world. We are still at best suitable for Samkhya and Vaibhashika Vedanta. So a lot of the effort that goes into Vedanta, 99% of the work that goes into it is going to be preparing your mind. But it's not going to lead you to moksha. It's a necessary but not sufficient condition for moksha. Self realization is the knowledge that you already are realized. It's the understanding that however much I try to improve, and I can keep improving, keep improving, keep improving, I can never become that which is infinite. I can never become unlimited. I can spend not just one lifetime, but many lifetimes, right? So that is the philosophy of Vedanta. Sanjay, hi.
Yeah, can I continue?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, you purify the mind, and then you are ready for listening,
Right.
taking in the
Shravanam, Mananam,
thing,
Nididhyasnam. Yeah.
Shravana Mananam Nididhyasana, and then Nididhyasanam is what I expect is the recognition that you are Brahman, or
No, yeah, yeah. So, no, no. Recognition that you are Brahman happens in Shravanam itself. But what happens is that you recognize it for a moment, but then you step out of the classroom and you go and you go back to your world, and suddenly, it's like my boss, my boss, my guru used to say, it's like you separate the weeds under the water and you can see through, and then you leave, go back, and the weeds close again, right? It's a basically the reason that you have to do nididhyasana and mananam is because your preparation is not complete. You can prepare and prepare, but it's not 100% complete. You can never be like totally. Nididhyasana and is basically just an extension of Karam Yoga in a way. It's Karam Yoga done with a lot more knowledge. That's what Nididhyasana is. So you're saying, but the understanding comes with Shravanam only. Understanding doesn't come. See, some people say that understanding comes in the deep heat of samadhi. That is complete bunkum. Okay? Because understanding comes through the words, listening to the words. It comes when your teacher is speaking to you. What comes through Nididhyasana is a uh, is more conviction in that understanding, is a longevity or sustainability of that understanding. You Nididhyasana may you remember the time that you understood. You remember, replay what it is that you understood, what it is that the teacher said, what was it, and then try to reconcile, okay, why did I forget it? What happened in this world that made me forget it, that made me think differently, and try to reconcile the two so that you're you don't fall back into this thing of understanding and then it's called pratibandhika buddhi, understanding and then again forgetting, then understanding and then again forgetting. So nididhyasana brings conviction. That's what nididhyasana is. But the understanding actually happens in Shravanam because the understanding comes from the words of the scripture. It comes from the words of the guru. It's when let's say I'm telling you I'm your guru. Let's say I'm let's give a big thing and say, oh, Dheeraj is self-realized, okay? and I'm your guru. So I'm explaining this to you right now. This is when the understanding should come. At this point, if it doesn't come right now, it doesn't matter because you haven't done years of Karam Yoga. But I'll keep doing this with you again and again and again. Slowly and slowly and slowly, you will get the understanding. As you're working on your Karam Yoga, as I'm working on teaching you, you will get that understanding while I'm teaching you. That understanding will come and you'll say, oh, I get it. The problem is you'll go out and you'll go back to your research and you'll be engaged in all mathematical issues. You'll be dealing with the politics of your college. Your guide is getting upset at you because you're not spending time and you're saying, what the hell, he doesn't understand anything. Your friends, your girlfriend is going to get angry at you. All kinds of things will happen. And this knowledge will go into the background and you'll forget. But then you come back to class again and again you'll remember. Then you forget. This is what happens in real life. You know, to counter this, to address this, you do nididhyasana. Because when you do nididhyasana, which is away from class, you're reliving the class. Again, you're reliving in slow motion, taking your time and saying, okay, what what happened? I understood this, but now when my teacher said this and all that, I got lost. What happened? You try to relive it and say, where did I get lost? And then say, oh, this is where I got lost. Oh, no, no, that's not right. Next time I will not let that happen. Right? That process of assimilation, it's an assimilation process of assimilation of the knowledge into your actual life. Right now, the knowledge happens in the classroom. You have to assimilate it in your life. That is nididhyasana. And mananam is making sure that you have conviction in the knowledge, in the sense that अभी मैं तो तेरे को कह रहा हूं there is only one atma, but Samkhya says there is a prakriti and multiple atmas. Who's right? For that, you have to think through this. You have to think, okay, yeah, how can there be a different prakriti and a different atma? Because then you have to really, really think, how can I, if I'm atma and something completely different called prakriti, how can I sense prakriti? How can I experience prakriti? What is common between me and prakriti that I can experience it via that medium? Do we both have the same electrostatic force, which is why we talk to each other? If there is something common between Prakriti and me, then neither me nor Prakriti is fundamental. That means we are parts. There is a part of me which is common and the rest of it is different. That means I'm not fundamental and the Prakriti is also not fundamental because they're still parts. So you got to go deeper. So you got to get to a point where you're fundamentally different than the other. Then there is no interaction. So it's just not possible. The only possibility the only possibility is if there is only one fundamental entity, which is the entity of the experiencer and the experienced. This kind of thinking is called mananam. You got to do this, otherwise you won't get conviction. But even after getting this conviction, habitually you will still fall back on old ways. To assimilate that in your life and not do that, you do nididhyasana. So understanding happens in Shravanam. Rational conviction happens with Mananam. Emotional conviction happens with Nididhyasana. Okay, that's how it is done. But if you're really, really ready, if you really, your Karam Yoga is to an extremely high degree and your mind is very pure, then Nididhyasana is almost not needed, or very, very little. Shravanam is enough. So that's
So
a lot
if
of theory,
I,
my friend. Okay.
so,
Last question. No, no, because I don't
okay,
want to get too much into theory. Otherwise, we are going to lose
okay,
everything.
sure, sure.
What do you?
Uh, this is the last question because I'm trying to fit all of this together. So basically, if the mind is pure and it gets the information
Yes.
that I am Brahman,
Right.
then that knowledge stays because you
Absolutely.
said
Yes. That knowledge
Nididhyasana
stays
means,
because you see it. You see the truth of that statement.
and you don't stop seeing it.
You don't stop seeing it. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. What is the statement? This knowledge. It's just a vritti. Remember, all knowledge is a vritti. This is a particular kind of vritti, right? It's called an
Mm.
akhand akar vritti. That means there is an akhand akar. There is no khanda. There is no division between the seer and the seen. That vritti is called the akhand akar. That is Vedanta. Vedanta is nothing but this akhand akar vritti. This akhand akar vritti comes to you. You hear it.
Mm.
The mind receives it. The mind understands it, and the mind dissolves.
The
The mind
mind what?
understands I am not a separate entity. My true nature is Brahman. I thought I am the experiencer, the rest of the world is experienced, and I'm just this limited experiencer. I am not that. I am Brahman. That fear is resolved. That is self realization.
Got it. Right.
Let's see whether it retains after some time. I'll ask you next time you come to class. I'll give you a quiz. Okay? Okay. All right. Sanjay, you missed most of this, but I don't know whether you got it was a little so this class was a little what should I say, conceptual, sorry to say.
Okay. No, I'll listen to the recording. Yeah, got it. Quite a bit this time.
This is basically we are looking at that one shlok, the first line
Mm,
of that shlok, which we talked last time also, where
mm,
Krishna Bhagwan is telling Arjun that all the jivas are an ansha of mine, are my part.
mm,
You are a part of me. So how do we interpret it? And actually, the way we interpret it is by saying that we are not an actual part, meaning it's not that there's an actual jiva and then actual Ishwar. There's only one Ishwar, there's only one Brahman. The It's a seemingly a part. We think apparently that we are a part. We appear to be a part. This whole world appears to be um, different or a part of Brahman. We think that the collective world, but the world actually doesn't exist as an independent entity. It exists as a seeming
mm,
entity.
mm.
Right? So that is the answer. So we are all part of Ishwar, but seemingly so, right? Apparently so. We appear to be as if we are part of Ishwar, but really we are only Ishwar. And these kinds of teachings where we say, I will, you take care of me, I'll take care of you, I'm a part of you, all these are very important as transitional teachings so that we learn, we go from here. And I promised you there was one more thing I wanted to do before time runs out, which is to take you through um, the Buddhism thing, which will solidify this this process of teaching for you. It will solidify, especially if you may be very tired right now. It's like already I've been speaking for an hour, but if you listen to this again, this video again, then you will see this. So let me just share this with you. Where is it? One sec, guys. Sorry. That's it. Sorry, I can't seem to be able to share it. Okay. Yeah, right. Okay. Do you see this chart?
Yep.
Okay. So these are the different philosophies that we have in India. There are basically 12 main philosophies. There's Mimam Veda. All these are the ones that are Veda. We'll talk about this another time. I just want to take you through these four. So Buddhism has four main schools. There are many schools, but four main schools. One school is called Vaibhashika. Another is called Sautrantika. Another is called Yogachara, ye upar. And the last one is called Madhyamika. Okay? I'm going to shut this actually. I don't think we need to share this. So, there's a reason why I'm telling you this. You'll see the progression. So when we talk about Vaibhashika in Buddhism, the Vaibhashika school says, it's definitely they are spiritual, so they are not materialistic. So they say that there is an existence of something called spirit, something that sees. So Vaibhashika says, I exist as the seer, that cognition exists. The world exists as objects. So if there's a tree out there and I'm seeing the tree exists. I use my perception to see the tree. That is the basic metaphysics of it. The tree exists as it is. I also exist. So tree is called artha, the object. Me, the cognition is called gyan. So it's called jnana artha vada. Both. So tree exists, I exist, I see the tree through perception. That is the first one, the most basic. Then we move to Sautrantika from Vaibhashika. Sautrantika says, yes, the tree exists too and I exist too. But what the form I see of the tree is not exactly what the tree is. Neuroscience will agree with that. That exactly what the tree is, nobody knows. We just see a representation of the tree in our mind, right? Because tree creates an image. If we were to see the same tree in ultraviolet light, we might be seeing a very different one. But if we were to see it in infrared, we'd see a different form. So we are seeing a particular form of the tree based on what light is coming or what medium that we are seeing and how our mind is interpreting that. So the tree exists, but it exists in a form which is not known to us. Our mind creates the form. So the mind exists, the tree exists. So it's also Jnana Arthavada. Both of them, the object and the subject both exist. Then the third one is the Yogachara. That says that only the mind exists. Actually, the tree does not exist. The mind creates the tree. The vritti in the mind, it creates the tree. Now, a lot of people say this is very similar to Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. But actually, it is not. And that's what I want to tell you. This is the kind of thinking we fall into. The mind exists. The mind sees everything, but it's all in the mind. Right? Because then there's the last thing, which is Shunyavada or Madhyamika, which says neither the mind nor the tree exist. This mind is as much a creation as the tree is. And then what exists? Shunya, nothing. That's what Buddhism says. Vedanta says that is true. Neither the mind nor the tree exist, but what exists is Brahman. So, it's very hard. What is Brahman? If Brahman is not Shunya, then what is it? It's something. If it's at something, then that's not Brahman. Because Brahman is not a thing. So whether you call it Shunya or call it whatever, you basically come into the same thing. But the trap we fall in is always saying, oh, the mind exists and the mind is seeing all this. All this is in the mind. Then what is happening? The mind, already when we were talking, Krishna Bhagwan ka mind bol raha hai, don't be, you talked about it, the upset, don't get grief or whatever. Because it's as an individual that you're saying, as a mind, it's Vedanta doesn't agree with that. It says even the mind is a vritti. Okay, so I wanted to share this with you so you keep this in mind. When you are thinking, check in your own box in your mind, how are you thinking? It doesn't mean that you have to think like an Advaitin. Absolutely not. If that's not what you need to do right now, don't do that. Our effort right now for all of us has to be Karam Yoga, to grow, to become better. So thinking like an Advaitin right now is not useful for us, except as an academic exercise. But knowing it is good. Knowing this whole scenario, this whole situation, the whole screen, the whole landscape is a good thing. And knowing that for me right now, the important thing is I am an individual. I am suffering. I need to become better. I need to, have discipline. That is totally the right thing to do, in my opinion. Okay, so I'm done with whatever I had to say now. You guys can talk for whatever little time we have left.
Is it fair to say that? Sorry, did I interrupt?
No, I was just going to ask Mukta whether she's still awake. No,
Yeah,
not just
actually,
you, Mukta. I just picked on you because you were like the easiest to kind of. I could pick on Sanjay also. All of you are probably in the same boat.
no, today actually I'm very sleepy.
So this would have put you to sleep completely. This was just the
No.
right Lori sunai maine तेरे को. तू ना ये अगर तेरे को नींद नहीं आए ना suppose, तो then just put this on the recording and then you'll go to sleep. Within 5 minutes you'll be asleep.
No. Actually, since I'm talking, so let me ask the excuse
Okay,
me.
before you keep looking.
I actually want you to clarify to me that I've got a little confused actually. Maybe sleepiness might be the factor or whatever. The Samkhya and Dvaita,
Right.
aren't they similar or
No, they're different because see the Sankhya में क्या है? Sankhya says that there is something called prakriti, which is they're both they're both dualistic philosophies,
okay?
right? They're
Yeah.
both
So
dualistic, but
okay.
one says that there is something called matter,
Hmm.
which exists separately. It does not. Sankhya doesn't recognize something called Brahman, which is the basis of both matter and spirit. Whereas Vedanta recognizes Brahman. So Dvaita also recognizes Brahman as
Okay.
the substratum of everything. It just says that there is something called Paramatma, which is different from the jiva.
Okay.
And Vedanta says, yes, there is apparent, seemingly so. I mean, Advaita Vedanta says there is seemingly so a jiva, which is different than Paramatma, but that's only an apparent difference. It's a difference because of the upadhi. It's a difference because of conditioning, because of ignorance. There is actually no difference. That's the difference between the two. But they
Okay.
both agree to Brahman because the underlying thing about Vedanta is the recognition of Brahman. If the philosophy does not recognize Brahman as the fundamental underlying reality between for everything, matter, spirit, whatever, then it is not Vedanta.
Okay.
Okay. In fact, actually, just remember this: what Vedanta is a praman for Brahman. Vedanta is a praman for Brahman.
Okay.
Vedanta is a philosophy. If there's one thing that Vedanta does and which distinguishes from everything else, is it's a praman for Brahman. That means it says that Brahman exists. And you are that Brahman. But that there, you go a little you get into Advaita and all that. But
Okay.
Sankhya is not a praman for Brahman. Sankhya says
Okay.
Sankhya is a praman for prakriti and purusha, two separate entities. Okay.
Sorry, Nidhi. I just jumped in.
It's no problem.
What
Nitya
was
can
your
just talk to
question?
you later. No,
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 it's
no.
okay.
We can just. No, I
Okay.
was actually, I had a comment and a question, and the comment was that, you know, how you initially, when you laid out the spectrum from Charvaka to Advaita, and you said in the middle is Sankhya.
Sankhya. Yeah.
And you said the two extremes are science says matter is fundamental and consciousness is emergent, whereas Advaita says consciousness is fundamental and matter
Matter is
is
emergent.
seemingly, yeah.
Matter is emergent. Yeah, seemingly
Matter.
emergent. Yeah.
So what I was going to say is that's not, at least from what I have been reading, what you are addressing is what science is calling the hard problem of consciousness. And science is actually asking, really, is it true that consciousness is an emergent property of complexity, or is consciousness really fundamental?
No,
So I was
no.
going to say that,
Science is not asking that. So maybe
no,
this
no,
is no. Philosophers who have a
philosophy.
scientific
Okay,
background
okay,
are
okay.
asking that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
science is not asking that. Science is not because science cannot, you talk to a scientist, he will say, if there is no objective evidence, we cannot accept it.
So perhaps I'm calling neuroscience
Yeah,
science. I'm
not
saying,
neuroscience. Neuroscience also doesn't accept. You are calling people like Sam Harris or people who are on the cusp or on the border of philosophy and science. वो कौन एक और भी आदमी था
people,
get interviewed.
Francis, Lucille, what is his
Yeah,
name?
he's not a
All of those
scientist.
other guys.
He's got a background as a scientist, but he moved from a scientist to a philosopher. He's an Advaitin. So if you talk to actually a scientist, so what we are listening in YouTube are people who have a strong background in science, right? But they are now saying, I want to move to philosophy. They want to bridge the gap. But science as such, there's no textbook which will ever tell you, no neuroscience textbook will ever tell you that we don't know. Maybe consciousness is fundamental.
So this guy at NYU, who I mean, the guy who coined the term hard problem of
Conscious, yeah, yeah.
David Chalmers.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. So would you say he's not a scientist?
No, he may be a scientist. That's okay. I'm also an engineer, right? Because that's my training. I'm a manager, an MB, right? So that I'm not speaking as an engineer right now when I'm talking to you. So that David Chalmers may be a scientist, but that doesn't mean he can't have other interests, that he can't be a philosopher also. I'm saying science as such, the body of science doesn't recognize consciousness because the scientific method is whatever it is. Scientific method is let's look at empirical data, come
Yeah.
up with a theory. That theory then test it on more empirical data. That's what they call objective, right? So that method does not include consciousness.
Anyway, maybe it's
So
somewhat
it may be
shallow and it
semantic.
doesn't
Yeah,
really matter. It's
yeah.
just semantic. But the other thing I was going to ask is, how you said that everything that we ask is in Vyavharika and not Paramarthika. If you're asking from the viewpoint of Paramarthika, there are no questions. All of this
Right, right.
engagement, this entire class,
What you're saying is what I
everything
said in the same
yeah,
way.
I mean, it's Vyavharika. It's
Yeah,
by definition, it
yeah,
has
yeah,
to
yeah.
be
So that's what I'm saying. That's why I said everything you ask is in Vyavharika.
no, okay. I think I was
I mean,
asking
you can't. There's nothing you can't ask. You cannot ask as a Paramarthika because who do you
exactly,
ask?
exactly.
Right, but you can as a person, as an individual, you can try to have a understanding of what Paramarthika would look like.
Hmm.
You can like we can never understand a black hole, we can never been there, but from the outside we can try and figure out what the properties of a black hole might be. Correct. It's the same way we are, as an individual, we are trying to figure out what non-duality would be like, but we are not living in a non-dual world right now as we are asking the question.
Right.
But it doesn't stop us from being able to conceptualize to the best of our knowledge what non-duality is. So all this when we say Brahman, right? We are not we are conceptualizing. And then we come to a point where we say this conceptualizing can only take us this far. After that, I can't anymore more. Because how can I conceptualize? I can go to the edge. It can take me to the door, but I have to walk through the door. In other words, you know, because Brahman is me, so it'll take you a distance. संजय तू तो बहुत लेट आया था तो I'm sure there's no
हाँ यार क्या
कोई बात नहीं. This is all good यार.
कभी कभी होता है.
चलो, but I mean, I think we will. This was an extremely conceptual session. We'll try to avoid in the future. We'll try to.
I think it was really interesting. Not interesting. I think it was really valuable.
Yeah. I mean, one in 10 or 1 in 15 such should be nice. Rajiv, all good?
Yeah, it's all good. I think I think this was very powerful, to tell you frankly, because, looking at the progression all the way from material world to the spiritual world and the bridging going on, I found that pretty fascinating. I think I have to go listen to this again, but I felt like actually transitioning from Samkhya to
Vedanta.
to Advaita Vedanta is very logical.
Yes.
Because you're just reducing, you're just removing the falsity out, right?
Right.
And you're just left with just one
I mean,
thing.
Samkhya took you that far, and Vedanta is now saying let's go.
So I think
go to
boxing
many
this, the way you did, was actually pretty attractive because it removes the FUD out of it. Now, the concept of, the brain or your mind actually figuring it out, right? That there's only Brahman, right, as a vritti, and then the brain dissolves. I mean, those are enchanting things to think about, right? But the transitioning part was fairly natural.
I think the point I was also trying to make was that it makes sense to stay in duality. It
Yeah.
makes sense to do, because that's what gives us more
That's step
benefit.
one, I think. That's step one. And next
Yes, that's
optimization is,
correct.
okay, your body and mind, all of them are not real.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think what you had said in the last couple of classes, Nitu, if I were to paraphrase, is this is where you and I were sort of misaligned, is you said it doesn't matter if the final thing you don't realize it as Advaita Vedanta. It doesn't matter because focus on the Karma Yoga, which is the middle of the spectrum,
Right.
right? And I said that it helps me to know that that is the end because otherwise it's difficult. Like, but I think to your point, the thing you kept saying is you can't jump from one end, from Charvaka to Advaita. You have to go
But
through.
the thing is, you can say it helps me to know that it's the end. But how do you know it's the end? It's only because I'm telling you or somebody's telling you that is the end. You don't know what your end is because you don't understand it. So I can tell you, no, the end is two realities, and you'll take it, okay, the end is two realities. That was what I was trying to tell you.
But
That
didn't you just say earlier that the rational part, but that is how you know, is through
but
Shravana.
have you gone through that rational mananam to find out for reality? Because some of the questions that you asked me before have been, okay, how can you say that there is only one? What I'm trying to say
I
is
don't
even
think
to
I've
do
ever asked that. Is it?
okay, it doesn't matter. What I'm trying, and I don't want to make it personal to you. I mean, for anybody, for me, for everybody, the it's a chicken and egg because to really know, you need to have karma yoga, and
Yeah.
right, and to do karma yoga, you're saying you have to really know. It doesn't
No,
work
no,
like that.
no, 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 no,
Ah,
not at all.
then,
I am saying Karma Yoga is a prerequisite, but that doesn't mean you keep doing Karma Yoga without having any idea.
but I'm saying, what do you, if you say to do karma yoga, you need to know, right?
Yeah. Maybe we just defer this discussion
Okay,
later.
okay, yeah,
Actually, I just wanted to make one other point,
yeah.
which I find really, really fascinating about today's class. I think in order to really, finish up your asana, right, the last step, it seems to me that you have to teach yourself, your mind, that there is no mind,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
And that's
there's an apparent mind. It's not that there is no.
yeah. Well, again, so it's all falsity, right? So you
Yeah.
have actually created this thing now called mind and
Yes.
vrittis and all that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
then now you're going. I mean, that's the transition point I see from
Yes.
Samkhya to
Advait.
Advait.
Right.
That first you define this mind and you're doing purification of the mind, and then at the end you're saying, okay, Mister, there is just no mind.
So so
Figure
the
that one
so
out.
so so Sankhya would say the theory of cognition is not that different. So Sankhya will also say that there is a world out there, and there is your consciousness, and in your consciousness, through your eyes and your ears and everything, you've taken the world out there and created vrittis of it, which you're seeing. So in Sankhya too, I'm seeing the vrittis or sensing the vrittis, and I'm interpreting those vrittis as an object. Correct? But that
Yeah.
object actually exists.
Mhm.
In Vedant, we are saying,
Yeah.
I'm seeing those vrittis, I'm sensing those vrittis, and I'm interpreting those vrittis as the world, but the world doesn't really exist. And then you're saying actually the vrittis also don't really exist.
Mhm. Yeah.
These also are just a play of of Maya.
Maya. Yeah.
Because all there is this consciousness and seeming vrittis in the consciousness. That's
Mhm.
it. Even in Sankhya, for you, there's only consciousness and vrittis. There's nothing else. You can't access anything else.
Yeah.
The mind can only access the vrittis. But you're saying, okay, the vrittis are representing something real.
Yeah.
The vrittis are real. Vedanta says there's consciousness and there are vrittis. The vrittis are not representing anything real, and the vrittis themselves
Yeah.
are apparent. Because what really exists is only the consciousness. Because when you say there's a vritti, the vritti has to be in consciousness. That means the consciousness is changing. As the vritti goes up and down, the consciousness is also changing. The medium in which a wave takes place, the medium has to change. But Vedant, but Brahman is not a medium because it's not a thing. So to say that I'm going to have a vritti in Brahman means nothing. It means Brahman has to change with the vritti.
Yeah,
Brahman can't
that's
change.
not possible. Yeah.
Not possible. So this vritti is just imagination. So you're going to land up in some sort of soup, intellectual soup, whichever way you go. Then you'll say, okay. So that's what I'm trying to say. If you really have to know, if you really have to have conviction, you are. We haven't done that. I can tell you, we haven't done that thinking yet.
I think we've been talking about, we're not the body, we're not the mind, right? But, that's a slightly different than, oh, there is no mind.
Yes. No.
So I think that's the lesson I learned today, right? Is
Right.
there is no
Because
mind.
that's why I like the progression of Buddhism, which I told you. Because you'll see the progression if you listen to this again, you'll see how it clarifies. Because Buddhism says it starts with there's an object out there and the mind. Then it says the object is different than what the mind sees, but they're both there. Then it says the object is not there, the mind is there. Then it says neither the mind nor the object is there. And what is there? Shunya.
Yeah.
Right? What we say is what is neither of them is
Brahman.
there, but what is there is Brahman. So it's just if you want to. But the other thing that I always struggle with, and that's why I wanted to just convey with you as friends, is there is something called Vedant Vasana. Okay? Just something for you to understand. Vedant Vasana means we get so enamored
Yeah.
by the intricacies of Vedant and the wonderful statements of Vedant that we forget that that is not our purpose. Our purpose is not to understand Vedant. You know, Vedant is just a tool. It's like what does it say? It's a nav, a kishti. You use the kishti to cross the river. Once the river has been crossed, you throw the kishti, you forget the kishti. That's what Vedant is. So, reading too much, going too deep into different philosophies, spending all your time just listening to different philosophies is going to lead us astray. What we need at this moment is not what we need at this moment is, purification of the mind. That's what I was trying to emphasize. That's what I was trying to say to you also, Kiki, because we
Yeah. No,
think
no,
that
no.
we know the ultimate goal, but we don't really know. We just think
So,
I have an idea.
so,
And
he- so here is the dilemma, right? How do you purify something that isn't there?
don't go into that, right? That is what I was trying to tell you.
Just-
You will, rather than purify, you will get caught in your own analysis loop.
so, yeah, I
But
understand.
but you forget, you can simply see what is causing you grief right now. How can you set expectations right? How do you react to this world better? How do you get a better sense of your mind? Assuming that don't think about whether it exists or not. Assume that it exists. How do I get a sense of it? That is going to be very much more useful right now.
Yeah, I get it.
That's all I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there are many, if you look at philosophers, there are so many unself-realized philosophers who've written volumes and volumes, which are all fun as a student, and then afterwards you realized, what the hell, doesn't do anything for me.
I
I think
do
for me,
that
sorry.
Karam Yoga does purify the mind. Also, Bhakti also purifies the mind.
Yeah.
But doesn't Shravanam also purify the mind? Listening to.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's what Kiki was saying. I think what she was trying to say, which is that this sort of knowledge, even if it's not complete knowledge, just some gyan is important. And I totally agree. This, what you're listening also purifies, but up to a point. If you get enamored by the Shravanam and all you're doing is Shravanam and all you're doing is listening to more videos, I see a lot of people who are doing that. Not amongst us, I'm saying in general. I've seen a lot of such people. Then you are missing the point. That's my feeling. That's just as a friend, it's my input to the
Concern.
discussion.
Yeah.
You can take it or leave it. I'm not Buddha, so don't take my word for gospel.
Regarding mind, I would like to say 2 points. uh, I think if we can create a space between yourself and your mind
Hmm.
and just try to observe your mind very often throughout the day.
Right.
Observation of mind, and second point is silencing the mind.
Mm.
You see, that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Those two things I think we all should practice, and to create a space between yourself, the ultimate, if you want to really go close to the ultimate, you have to separate your mind. And silencing of the mind when there's too much chatter inside. I think that helps a lot.
Sanjay, do you do that and it's helpful for you?
I,
How
I
how
try. I
how
try.
exactly? I know that you start your day by meditating, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
at some points
It's
during the day,
meditation
you
and
kind of become aware of what's happening.
yeah, I try to do it most of the times just to slow down the pace
Mm.
and just try to identify the dark areas in which the behavior was not good on a
Mm.
daily basis. And then at night, just try to go over what all activities and what all tough situations I went through
Mm.
and what was the behavior. Uh, did the mind trouble you? Did you do the right things? Was your response very conducive or
Appropriate.
not?
What you
All
wanted was your
that
response. What your knowledge told you. What your
told you to do.
buddhi
Yeah.
tells you is the right response. Right. Exactly. I
So you
think
do
that
that
is,
every
that's
day.
a big part of Karam Yoga. I call it Karam Yoga because because i- that gives you the actual input to work on, right? Otherwise, what are you working on if you don't know the problems of your mind that you're working on?
And so what do you do, Nitu, in terms of
I do exactly what
for
he's saying.
example?
Exactly.
So
Which is
like in the morning,
I
like
make
practically, what do you do?
exactly that. It's very practical. I realize when I've lost my temper, when I have acted in a way which is not appropriate, which is not respectful, and I try to remember that the next time. I try, I mean, the best I can, but that's all I can do. And which includes being selfish, which includes being, kind of do in any whatever way you define the right thing is for you. We always we know what the right thing is, but we often not do that right thing, don't do it. And then if you recognize it and see that yes, you're not doing the right thing, that requires some objectivity in the first place. Most people can't even recognize it. They may recognize it 1 month later when everything has died cool down. But now with practice you can recognize it instantly. You can recognize it within 5 minutes that okay, this was not right, something went wrong here. Right? And you step back. So actually I remember this very interesting concept which I read somewhere. It says what on the path of growth what happens is he gave मेरे को याद नहीं आ रहा है, but the main thing was he said your loss of control, your issues, your wrong things you do, they become less frequent. Like you, let's say you're losing your temper too much, it'll become less frequent. When it happens, it lasts for a lesser amount of time,
Lesser amount of time.
right?
Correct.
You recover quickly. And there were two other things that he had said, which were, but these two I remember. That this is how this is what you have to do. There's nothing you can't, and you shouldn't beat yourself up about it. Don't kind of get into a funk and depression. Oh my God, I'm so horrible. I'm so useless. I'm so weak. Don't get into that funk if possible. But for me, definitely, it's a big change from 10 years ago. I don't know whether it's just age, which is also possible, but it is.
There was also
All this knowledge and everything, it makes a difference. And if you put an effort to live what you have studied and try to live that on a daily basis, it helps a lot. It helps a lot, definitely.
Mm.
So one skill that I would like more feedback on from you guys is, as I've been trying to slow down the racing mind, the monkey mind, right? I know that my mind is much more relaxed in the morning versus afternoons and evenings. Evenings is the worst. Nighttime is even worse. So any success you have had in terms of stabilizing the mind and the monkey mind, any tools that you're using, that might be helpful. So we can talk about it
Well,
maybe
I
next
can give
time.
you, if nobody else, I can tell you what Vedanta actually says about it. Gita says about it. Okay. Will that help?
Yeah. I'm looking for input.
So what it says is, if a mind is as monkey racing mind like this, meditation will not help you. So which was a big surprise for me. I thought meditation is required to still the mind, right? It's true. But it says when your mind is racing like you describe it so much, the cure for that is Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga has to precede meditation. Because meditation ke liye bhi, you have to be ready for meditation. Just like you have to be ready for Vedanta, right? You have to be ready for meditation. So when the mind, meditation works for a mind which is reasonably still, then meditation improves the focus tremendously. But if the mind is always running everywhere, then okay, meditation, everything helps. But the main issue is Karma Yoga. The reason why the mind is running in all so many places is because of anxiety, and the anxiety is coming from expectations, and expectations come
Desires, yeah.
from Karma Yoga.
Okay. That's really good input, yeah. Okay.
That's the advice of the Gita on this. Like big waves of anxiety require Karma Yoga. Small minor things, you can deal with meditation.
I see.
Rajiv, there was a very interesting example that I heard or read somewhere of the brain versus the mind, where the brain actually intellectually you understand, but it's the example of a hathi, of an elephant and a mahout, where the mahout is the one who has, let's say, understood intellectually Vedant, but then your mind is like this elephant, and the those forces can be so strong that the elephant can get distracted with, oh, there is a plant here, so it has to be trained. The elephant has to be trained to just, the smallest signal from the mahout can make it walk in a particular way,
Right.
not
Yeah, I
get
think I've read about
distracted.
that example. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that a very nice example. In terms of Nitu, I think you had also mentioned how powerful our psyche and emotional responses are, as opposed to,
Well,
what you
Gita had mentioned. It was
Yeah, the important thing I've learned is reasoning does not work at times. You try to ignore the vrittis, or you try to
I
control,
tell you,
or you
Yeah.
logic and
have a
reason are
self-talk and just
highly
yeah.
overestimated.
Yeah.
But still useful. Yeah.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we call it a night for you guys and day for us?
Yes.
It's a long time. All right, guys. So in 2 weeks, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Deepraj.
Bye.
Glad you could join, man. It's good. It's good to have a youngster in the group. Some young energy.
You guys are all younger than me.
Oh, I see.
Oh, we're not.